Welcome back. This is Real Estate Safety Workshop number 9. Today, we're going to talk about 5 simple guidelines to live by. That's 5 simple guidelines to live by, because I believe in simple things, not complex things. And this is the 9th of 12 episodes that we've been doing all throughout the month of September. I thank everybody for tuning in for all of these. And today we're going to start really honing in on those things that you can do. This kind of wraps up the big strategic picture that we're going to talk about. And then next week we're going to get into some very specific details about open house safety and showing safety, and kind of throw a whole bunch of tips at you and different things that you can do, kind of a if this then that, do this instead of that type of thing. So we're back filming in my studios for YouTube and doing this one on Facebook Live as we speak. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in on both channels. Those of you who have been able to participate live, that's been awesome. But those of you who haven't, welcome, and I hope you get something out of this video. So we're going to get right into it. Why am I doing this? What is going on with safety? Well, this month September is National Safety Month, or is Realtor Safety Month, as according to the National Association of Realtors. Now, huge disclaimer here. I am not affiliated, other than a dues-paying member, to the National Association of the state or the local or any of those things, and they are not affiliated in any way with me or this material, this program that we're putting on today. Doesn't happen that way. They do their own thing, which is less than stellar in my humble view, and then I'm going to do my thing here, and we're going to see how this thing goes out. But I'm going to do doing 12 live sessions, 1 hour apiece, all month of September, and this is number 9 of those 12. So let's hop right into it. 5 simple guidelines to help you stay safer and help you be able to understand what it is that you need to do. These are not complex. These are not difficult concepts to understand. These are very basic, very simple things, because that's really what I want you to have. So let's get into it. Number one is that your job is real estate and your mission is to go home every night. You've heard me say this throughout, and it's been sprinkled in through all of the other videos and things that we've talked about up to this point. But this is the number one thing, the number one guideline that you need to remember at all times. Because again, you can be very, very good at real estate and suck at safety and suck at taking care of yourself. And you can lose everything in a minute, in an instant. You can lose everything because you made a bad decision when it comes to who you should meet and how you should meet them, and what the rules are, what your rules are for how you interact with the general public, strangers, and people you don't know or trust. Likewise, you can be a terrible agent. You can be not good at this job at all. The washout statistics for real estate agents is incredible. I mean, 80–85% are gone in the first couple of years. So you may not be very good at this, but you still deserve to go home every night. In fact, that's far more important, especially if you're not going to be in the real estate industry for a great deal of time afterwards, or at all. So it doesn't matter where you are on the career spectrum, whether you're a new agent, an old agent, male, female, many years of experience, no years of experience, young, physically older, in great shape, in bad shape. One decision and one thing that you do wrong can lead to other decisions. Could lead to other decisions that lead to other decisions, and those things tend to happen, bad things tend to happen at the end of that street. It's not to say that one mistake is going to hurt you or get you killed. I don't want to mislead anybody to thinking that's true. A lot of the guys out there selling things like pepper spray and apps and guns and training and ninja classes and all that kind of stuff, they will try to tell you that if you don't do this one thing, you'll die. Or if you make this one mistake, you'll die. If you don't do these 56 different things, you will die. That is not the case. That's not how things happen. Plane crashes don't just happen because of one thing. They happen because of a series of events put together in sequence that present an opportunity for the bad thing to happen. And in this case, we're talking about a bad guy doing something to you. Well, that's what we're trying to talk about here today. We're talking about what your main job is, and that's real estate, and what your mission is, and that's to go home every night. And if that is in fact your mission, then what are you doing about it? How do you construct your life around this? What that should mean and what that means to you is, and the reason this is in order is your job is real estate and your mission is to go home every night. Because the better you are at your job, the better you are as a real estate agent. And I don't mean whether or not you can, smile for the camera or do things like that. I mean how good your business is, how strong your business is. Because the stronger your business is, the stronger your safety is going to be. The stronger your security is going to be. Why? Because you will build in the ability to say no. The stronger your business is, the more likely you are to say no. The more rules you will have in place for who you meet with, when you meet with them, and what circumstances. The stronger your business, the less pressure there is financially and otherwise that you feel like you need to prove something or do something or pay a bill or do something of that nature. So the better your business is, the safer you're likely to be. Now, that is not a universal fix-all rule saying that, hey, as long as you build your business, nothing ever will happen to you. But we've got other principles and other things that will help cover down on that. But the first and foremost thing that you can do is just to improve your business, to improve how it is that you do what you do, improve how you learn and how you go about your everyday business. Because the better it is, the better off you will be. So one of the keys to that is to be able to ask better questions. And we've covered this on some of the other topics. But you need to be able to spend a lot of time on developing questions that get you valuable information. In the military, we call this thing actionable intelligence. Intelligence is this broad field where you gather a whole bunch of data. And just because you gather data, you could get reams of it, stacks of it, piles of it. Just because you have it, it doesn't mean that you should do anything with it. It doesn't mean that it's going to tell you anything, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be able to share or teach you something in the moment. So the most important thing is to develop those actionable intelligence questions. So you go about and you ask the questions that get you information that you can take action on, or that help you make a decision. Is this person someone that I can trust? Does their story match up? Does this sound like somebody I want to work with? Forget the trust, forget the safety aspects, forget the fear, forget all of those things. Is this somebody that you want to work with? Are you matched up right? Are they just in a different place in their life and you're not real sure how to deal with them? If you are a seasoned agent that's a little bit long in the tooth and gray in the hair, maybe the first-time home buyers are not your best thing because you've been working more along with people that are in your own demographic, and that's who you know better than anybody else. And the young millennial types of the first-time home buyer, maybe you just don't match up quite well. Well, that would be one of those things that you're going to want to determine. Obviously, there's an age difference there, but what I mean is just where you are on the point of life. Because a lot of people go through different economic and moral and ethical and physical phases in their life where they're coming up and going down. So how are you matching up according to the people that are across the table from you? So asking these types of questions that help you understand what it is you can do for them and whether or not your service is a match is the best thing for you. If this is a type of person, if the client that you're trying to meet with is the type of person that expects you to answer the phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I mean, if that's you, then great. But if it's not you, then maybe that's not the person that you want to work with. Because you set a certain hours, like, look, I'm available from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. 6 days a week, but don't call me at midnight. I'm not responding back. And these are some of those things you're going to want to iron out. You're going to want to figure out whether this person likes to take the lead or whether they like to be led. I mean, these are some really easy, simple things, but developing those questions is going to be key for your overall security and safety, as well as developing your business. Because it's not enough just to ask how many bedrooms, how many baths, how much square footage, what are the schools you're looking for, what zip codes have you been looking in, you want a pool, you want no pool, you want a first floor master. I mean, this is all really easy, predictable stuff that, quite frankly, they can look up online without you, and they don't need you for that. But what they need you to do is help do other things that they may not even be able to clearly define. They know they need a little bit of help, but they don't know yet what they don't know. So you help them by asking them questions like we talked about in some of the other videos of, what do you love about where you live right now? What do you hate about where you live right now? What are some things that you would change if you could right now about the place where you live? What are some things that you would never change? Or if you had the ability to bring them with you, what would you do? So you ask, and please do not pile up all these questions at once. Ask them one at a time and give them plenty of space. As I have personally found that the best way to get through a really good discussion is one question leads to a discussion that goes on for quite some time. So it's not about getting through 6, 8, 10 questions. I'm happy to stop at 3 if I get a lot of information, because, hey, you trigger that one thing that gets the folks on the other side talking, and you being able to respond and kind of feed off of that and see where things go. This is not some kabuki trick, evil dance that you're trying to manipulate. This is just about listening to somebody, asking a question and then listening, but asking questions that aren't just yes, no, because yes, no doesn't tell you much. How many times out there, my fellow real estate agents, how many times out there have you sold someone a house that you could describe as exactly the type of house that they did not want when you first started the search? How many times have you sold somebody a house in a different neighborhood, the one that they said they didn't want to live in? How about a price range? Is it higher than what they started out, lower than what they started? This is why you don't ask the yes, no questions. I mean, some of them you have to, but that's a real simple form. I personally send it out in a Google sheet, a Google form, and just here, go fill this out. Real simple questions that hold, square footage, schools, bedrooms, bathrooms, 2-story, basement, whatever. Those are some real basic questions, and you can kind of get past that. But understanding that everybody, because housing isn't perfect, it's not a one-for-one tradable commodity like a blue Ford Fusion and a blue Ford Fusion. These two things are basically interchangeable. Houses are not, because every house sits on a different piece of earth, and just by doing that alone, it's going to be a little bit different. And every house is built by hand by different people and different times of day, different times of year, and everything's just not going to be quite the same. So this is the stuff that you end up with. You have to ask those good questions that get them talking. And then when you don't hear things that make sense, or you don't hear things that sound like they've really given this a whole lot of thought, maybe they're trying to respond or trying to get you to change the subject back over to something else. These are the type of things that are red flags, and you have to understand what they are. And all of those things, like what you say and what you ask, I'm not talking scripts. You need to put the scripts away. Put those sales scripts away and just listen. And as if it was someone that you loved and cared about on the other side of the table, your family member, someone that your best friend, and you wouldn't just sit there and give them the nice script that always works. It's got a 40% conversion rate or some nonsense like that. You'd ask them a question. Well, why is that important to you? What is it about that makes sense? And what is it about that you don't like? How would that work for you in your view? I mean, these are real simple questions that we ask normal people on a day-to-day basis. But you have to be able to ask these as a real estate agent and get off of those scripts, because this is how you can build your business better. You build your business better by developing better rapport with the people that you work with. And then by developing better rapport with the people that you work with, your business will grow. Your business grows, you say no more often, and you're safer in the end. So remember, your job is real estate, but your mission is to go home every night. And the better you are at the job, the better you'll be at your mission. But all of those things lead you into, okay, so I've asked these questions. Now what do I do with it? Well, you have to develop your own set of rules and limitations. That's guiding principle number 2. It's basically a go, no-go criteria. This is a to-do or not to-do list. These are things that are absolute. And I highly recommend that you write these down and share them, not only with your clients, but with your colleagues, with everybody that you work with. These are my hard and fast rules. I do not meet after 7 p.m. I do not do this. I do not meet with strangers. I do not meet with anybody who hadn't pre-qualified. I do not go to a listing appointment with a house I'm unfamiliar with and someone who has not been recommended me personally by a friend. Whatever your rules are, you have to codify them. We have speed limits on certain roads for a reason. There's not one big universal speed limit out there, because I-70 that comes right up our way through Frederick, Maryland, down from Baltimore area, it's a 70-mile-an-hour speed limit most of the way, 65 in some. But that 70-mile-an-hour speed limit would not work on these curvy Loudoun County roads. 70 miles an hour would be a little bit ridiculous. So it's 35 miles an hour on those roads, sometimes 20. But it just depends, and you have to set those limitations just like a speed limit. And you have to really stick by it. Not like the cop that goes, it's 20 mile an hour speed limit, it's 25, I'm just going to let you go for today. You have to set those hard and fast rules and not break them for any reason. This means that you don't have a list of 45 different things that you're not going to do. or that you are going to do, because that's too many. Remember, we talked about before, human brains go 1, 2, 3, too many. That's pretty much how our brains work. So when you start and approach something with a long list of things, that's okay. That's good, because that's brain dumping. That's mind mapping. You're getting those things out of your head that are important to you. Now you go back and you take that list of things that you are definitely that you have to have, or things that you won't do, and you start looking for commonalities. You start looking for areas where they mesh and intertwine. And that, you boil that list down, I would say really honestly, no more than 6 or 7. 7's probably tops. 10, I guess so, maybe, but you gotta, 10 is tough. It is very tough to have 10 things that, bar none, you will never do these 10 things. I love using the driving analogy, because you can put on there, one of your top 10 things is stop at every stop sign. Completely, full, roll back, stop. And then tomorrow you go out and you don't do it, even though it's important to you. It's important to you to stop completely because of safety, because of other things, and you don't do it. It just makes it too hard. So you got to keep those things very, very specific. So in the idea of that, it's, maybe one of them is stop completely at a stop sign, and maybe another one is slow down, don't drive quite so fast. Well, now you've got two things that mesh together, and maybe it is drive safer. And don't put some random thing like that to it, but say that, look, I'm going to approach everything about my business and about my life in a way that makes me get home, that mission part, get home every night. So by developing those go, no-go lists, first you can brain dump if you want to and get all those things down on paper, and then you start to squeeze them together and compile them and mesh them into something that works. And now, hopefully you have something that's around 6 or 7, maybe even less. Maybe you've only got 3 things that are just absolute no-goes for you, and that's fine. Never do an open house alone. Boom, there's one. So whatever your rules are, you stick with them, because they become your rules, and you do not break these cardinal rules. These are the things that are absolutely non-negotiable. Non-negotiable, period. I don't care if it's your family member. Family is, come on, okay, it's 7 o'clock, let's say after dinner, let's go ahead and go over there. I don't do that. I'm sorry. I do not do that. I do not meet after hours. Oh, come on, man. Come on, buddy. Look, I'll meet you there at 6 in the morning, but not 7 at night. Whatever. It's your choice. It's your call. You have to figure out, and then you have to live up to it. We'll get to some of those pieces in a second, but it's very, very important to understand that your rules have to be yours. They can't be somebody else's. Do not Google your way out of this one. Like all things that are safety related and personal security related, you cannot delegate this task. You cannot carbon copy. You cannot copy and paste a safety procedure or personal security procedures or policies or anything from anybody else. I've seen it firsthand when Air Force installations out there, these guys who write these plans, the EM shop guys, they tend to share a lot of information back and forth, which is a great thing. They should continue to do that. But then you would notice something that's like, wait a minute, the emergency response plan for Minot Air Force Base in the Dakotas and then Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida, they both have blizzard control measures in there. Why would you have a blizzard control plan in Panama City, Florida? Oh, it's because you copied and pasted somebody else's safety plan. It's not yours. You didn't really think through those things, but your goal and your intent was to get a policy, so you got one. You got a policy, and then you just moved on. You copied, pasted, and threw it down and said, check the box. You can't check the box on this one. You have to determine what your rules are, what your left and right limits are, what you will do and what you will not do. That is completely 100% up to you. The good news is it doesn't take a whole hell of a lot of time. You just sit there and think about things that are important to you, write them down. You've tried and figured out how do they mingle together and come up with that real short, small list, maybe 6, 7 at the most, and that's your list. And you roll with it. And now you have to enforce it. You enforce it and you stick with it for a period of time. If you discover that one of these things, I just keep breaking that one rule, well, maybe it doesn't need to be there, or maybe you need to modify the rule in such a way that, well, it's okay in this one instance, or there's an exception there. There's a built-in thing. Maybe you take it to another place in your own personal planning or in your own mentality, in your own mind, and you can deal with it there. But whatever stays and remains on that core list of to do or not to do, must-haves versus absolutely cannot have, that's got to be solid, and it has got to be etched in stone. put it in a frame, put it on the wall, share it with your clients right after your license information. I am licensed in the state of Virginia. My license number is blah, 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 blah. Here's also my rules. This is what I do. This is what I don't do. Very clear right from the beginning. And you know exactly where you stand. Because if you don't do if you don't do that step, if you don't write them down, you don't codify them, you don't put them out there, you won't know where to improve, which, is number 3. The number 3 guiding principle is constant improvement. Now, this does not mean that you need to spend 6 hours a week on something like your personal security and safety. That's great if you do, but it's not really necessary. You have to have a methodology for evaluating, for looking at what it is that you do and figuring out a schedule and a time frame and a list of achievements that you want to get throughout the year. So let's just say you had an idea that's like, look, I'd like to be a little bit more capable of defending myself. Okay, that's certainly a thing that you can put in there, and that's going to be your thing for the next year, for the next 6 months or whatever. But don't just go out and take a 1-hour class or a 3-hour class in Kung Fu and then think you're going to be Chuck Norris tomorrow. That's not going to work either. So what is your plan to have constant improvement? Are you going to take a martial arts class one day, then a firearms class another day, and then you're going to take another type of thing? So once a month or once a quarter, you're moving toward a goal. You're not trying to be an expert in any one thing. You're trying to be a little bit more well-rounded in a bunch of different things that'll help trigger those thought mechanisms and make those connections inside your brain that allow you to think through things in advance and be able to predict those things that happen a little bit better. Maybe that's your idea of constant improvement. Maybe the best thing that you should do is to really work on that list, because hey, you've heard me say this. Yeah, you got a list. I got to have a list, but I can't come up with this. It's too many. It's too much stuff. I've got 25 different things on my list, and I can't. There's no way I'm going to enforce all these things. I'm not going to meet at the office every time. I'm not going to take a friend. It's not going to happen. And if they're not going to happen, and you know it, then that's not a rule. That is not a cardinal rule. That is not something that belongs in your top list of to-dos or to-do or not to-dos. So look at that list on a regular basis. Take 5 minutes once a week on a Sunday afternoon or a Sunday evening or a Monday morning. Take 5 minutes and look at that list and go, did I break any of these rules this week? And if I did, why? What can I do to not break these rules in the future? What can I do to be more honest with myself in creating rules that I create for myself and my business? How can I be better and more true to myself? I've got on here that I will do this one thing and I haven't done it yet. Is that something I need to go, nope, that stops today. From this second forward, I am doing that thing, or I need to relook at this. These are the things that you have to discover and you have to think about when it comes to your own plans. But how are you going to improve yourself? You've looked at it and you've made the determination that some of these things just don't exactly work out. And do you drop them altogether, or do you modify them? Well, my suggestion would be to be honest with yourself, like we just talked about, and then modify them at first. You can take them off of that main list of 6 or 7 different things that you have, and now you pull 1 or 2 off that you just haven't been able to follow through, and you put them kind of in a separate pile. And then you readdress those in a couple months, 2, 3 months, maybe just set a time, put it on your Google Calendar, say in 3 months, I'm going to spend 10 minutes in 3 months evaluating whether or not I'm keeping these 2 that I pulled out of my original 6 or 7. Now you've got an actual plan. You've got a way to be constantly improving. Then also Google reminders and Google alerts. Boy, Google alerts are awesome. You can Google alert something. You basically put in a search onto Google and you say, this is the topic that I'm interested in. And it'll give you a series of results from that. And one of the best ways to do that is to click news. Now you see what's happening and what's fresh out there, maybe videos. And then if you don't get the results that you want, you go all the way down to the bottom of the Google page and you can click on the little button that says sign up for alerts. And if you got a Google account, a Gmail account, and if you don't, what are you doing? Get one. I mean, seriously. So you look at the bottom of the Google page and now you get notifications every time those keywords hit. You can get them as they happen immediately. You can get them once a day, once a week, once a month. I have certain Google alerts that I have set up that are only once a month. I have some that are once a week. I have some that are immediately as they happen. If that term hits in the Google sphere of the world, and I don't have the time to search for it myself, I let Google do it, then they notify me that, hey, your keyword has come up. One of them, because of the name Firehill Group, I have Firehill as a Firehill group as an indicator. Sometimes that kind of messes up because I get the words Firehill and group, but they're not connected. So there's a lot of different things in wildland firefighting and some street names that are Firehill. So it gets a little bit, I can't get these updates on a constant basis, so I get them set up for a periodic basis, either once a day or once a week, depending on the exact terms that I've used. So this is how you can train yourself. You can say, look, I want to learn more about this. And then you get a summary in your inbox of a bunch of different headlines that you can click on. And maybe you spend 5-10 minutes a week reading on something to help keep your mind fresh. Because what you don't want to happen, what you don't want is the mental atrophy. You don't want your brain connections to start not firing off. You don't want those, hey, you went through this intensive training program and you're at a peak state, you're rolling along, and then you stop doing stuff and it starts to fade away and starts to drop down to nothing. You don't want to be on that drop. You don't want to be on that cycle. So you do a couple things that kind of bump you back up and bump you back up. This is the normal cycle of everything. We sleep in cycles. We eat in cycles. Our body, we're designed to do things in cycles. So take advantage of that and bump that cycle a little bit by giving yourself an opportunity to learn things. Schedule a seminar. Schedule a time. If you're watching this on YouTube and you don't want to continue watching the whole rest of this video, click on that little clock up there in the corner. I think it's on this side, but anyway, there's a clock up here, and sometimes depending on the app you're looking at, it's down here. You click on that, add to, watch later. And then it'll automatically put it into your spool. Again, if you're logged in through Google, through your Gmail account. So if you're doing these things, you will have information at the ready because there's no shortage of knowledge. But what you don't want to do is, if you're in the moment, you're in the time, you're in the frame of mind that, look, today's the day I'm going to learn something new about personal security and safety for me as it relates to my business, and making sure that my job is solid with real estate and my mission is solid with going home every night. So now you have this stuff that's already compiled for you. You don't have to spend 10 minutes looking for it. It's right there. It's in your inbox. It's in your, I use an app called Evernote, and if you're not using that, I got to do a video on that because seriously, this is like my lifeblood. But save things, whether you're saving them to Google Drive or save them on your hard drive or save them in your bookmarks, so you have a resource for later. And then you go back and you look through. Now, what you'll find is, like I find, is sometimes what appealed to me on one day 2 months ago doesn't appeal to me anymore. Or I've already found something else that was a little bit better. So you wipe that one out, you delete it, get rid of it, and move on with your life. But sometimes there's that thing. It's like, I wouldn't mind learning a little bit more about that. And you spend 5 to 10 minutes, which is typical average time for reading a blog post. You kind of skim anyway, or looking at a video, and you learn something. And you benefit from it, and you keep those brain connections happening. You keep that cognitive base of your brain interacting with your physical body, because now you're starting to tie those things in to go, hey, when I see this, my brain will already know what to do. Now the only thing I need to do is get my body to kick into action. Which, guess what? That leads to number 4, right? Number 4 is taking your instinct and turning it into action. Taking all of those things which you claim to be instincts, which aren't really, because we as human beings don't have a lot of instincts built into us. We just don't by our nature, and that's a biology lesson that I can get in on another day. But basically, if you have an instinct, it's because your brain has been trained or learned something that you may not even be aware of. If people say, well, my instincts, I started to pay attention to them. But if you've ever done any of those type of meditation practices where you focus on one single sound or one single thing in the room and you block out all others, that's essentially what your brain is doing all the time. In those periods of meditation, you're actually training your brain and forcing your brain to ignore some of these things and focus only on the one, or to block out the one and focus on the many, because that's what your brain is doing all the time. Your ears are receiving vibrations all the time from a number of different sources. Right now, I have lights off to my side, right here. I can hear them. They've been humming the whole time. But I only really focus in on them when I tell my brain, hey, listen to that hum. The rest of the time I can just tune them out, because then I'm going to hear something else or nothing. But I hear them all the time. I also see a lot of things as fast as your eye moves. How is it that we as human beings can read something and determine whether or not we should inflect our voice as to ask a question or to make a statement before we even get to the end of the sentence? That's because our eyes are moving so fast. Our eyes are already ahead of us. Our eyes have already actually read the sentence, but it takes a while for that signal to get to the brain, send the appropriate signals to the part of the brain that's needed, get it connected to the mouth, and put those words out. That's how it works. So all of this stuff your brain's receiving all the time. But you got to know what to do with it. Just because you hear something or see something, you may identify, hey, what was that sound? And then you do what they did on these horrible Friday the 13th movies from back in the day. You go, let's go investigate. You know, let's go skinny dipping in the pond, and then let's come out and let's go investigate that horrible sound of screaming and the chainsaw. Let's go in that direction. That would be a bad action to take after an instinct for the most part. And we know that from watching those silly horror movies. But when it comes to taking your instinct and recognizing them, that's about recognizing that sound. That's about recognizing that thing that you see, that thing that you smell, that thing that you sense, and acknowledging it, number one, and then taking action on it. If something doesn't feel right, your first instinct should not be, let's study this further. Your first instinct needs to be move, do something, go somewhere. Get up, go to the bathroom, get up, walk around. If you're standing in line, get into another line, move around until you figure out. Because what's going to happen is once you start moving, your brain is going to shift from, hey, I was focused in on that thing, and you just told me, brain, that I should be moving away or toward or whatever that thing is. Now your brain moves into another mode going, what was it about that thing? And the brain starts to focus in on that one thing. Just like these humming lights. If I tell my brain to focus in on these humming lights, that's all I hear. If I tell my brain to focus in on the light that's coming in from the window over there, it's kind of, I'm very distracted by this pretty tree that's waving in the breeze out there. That is the thing that my eyes focus in on. It doesn't mean I stare like this at it. It just means that I'm acknowledging that it's over there and acknowledging that it's happening. When it comes to your own personal security and your safety, there are a lot of different context clues that we can get. We talked about those in previous videos about how to recognize certain patterns in people. This is not about becoming Jason Bourne or Chuck Norris or any of those types of things. It's about acknowledging those people who deliberately stand out or who deliberately blend in and trying to figure out why they're doing it. Are they just doing it to get attention, or are they doing it to avoid all attention? If they're trying to avoid all attention, why are they trying to do that? Most people don't avoid all attention. So you try to ask yourself some of those questions and make these analyses. But then all of these triggers, because you've been training your brain, you have your job straight, or your job is real estate, your mission is to go home every night. You've got the idea, you've got your to-do and not to-do list. You've been taking steps to constantly improve your own education, your own knowledge, your own wisdom, your own knowledge bank, information bank inside your brain. And now you take all of that stuff and you put it into action. You put it into action. That time, distance, and shielding that we talked about before. If you're in a kitchen and you're not liking the way the person that you're with is kind of acting, well, you keep that center island, you keep that counter in the kitchen between you and them. You keep a barricade and a barrier. You keep a sofa in between them and this. They got to jump over the sofa and do something. Give yourself time. You stay outside the room. You let them go in the room. These are taking actions on those instincts. The absolute worst thing that you can do, when you feel something, you get that gut instinct, is to do nothing. It's the worst thing that you could possibly do, because doing nothing is actually making a decision. It's making a decision to wait and see what happens, what the world is going to unfold for you. But the best way to get out of a bad situation is through it. That's the craziest thing in the world, but it's true. The best way to get through a tough situation is to buckle down and go through and do it. So that's not always the most comfortable thing to do. If you go with the flow, which is that happy medium ground, versus you've done nothing, you've frozen, you've stood still, and then you push and push and push through. And then that middle ground of go with the flow. Go with the flow is actually a very dangerous place to be. When you decide, and your instincts are firing off, and you hear something, see something that just doesn't sound quite right, and you just go with it. You don't change really anything about your pattern. You don't interrupt, your brain doesn't interrupt your body and say, hey, look, don't do that. I know you were walking down on this side of the sidewalk, but let's just walk on the other side of the sidewalk. Just that simple change in perception can allow your brain, give your brain permission to start thinking about things in a different way. And that is the key to being able to understand and watch things and predict things as they unfold. It's not a perfect science. It's not a perfect art. It's a blend of both. And over a period of time, if you focused in on that constant improvement, you may develop these things. But it takes a long, long time. And if you're just not comfortable with this, you're one of those folks who go, look, my instincts just aren't that good. I'm the last person to realize that I'm in a room full of blah, 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 blah. I'm the last person to realize that there's a fight about to break out. If that's you, that's okay. That's perfectly okay. You need to develop a different set of rules. The things that you have for yourself, your to-do or not to-do list, has to be very different from someone else who is very keen and who kind of has the head on the swivel all the time. Which, by the way, that whole head on a swivel situational awareness thing, I've talked about this before in other videos. It's so overrated and it's so hard to do. It is the most difficult, weird construct of a wish list. If you had more situational awareness, what does that even mean? And then they start to list things about, pay attention to what people are doing with their eyes, with their pockets. Make eye contact. Don't make eye contact. Certain places in the city, you don't make eye contact. In the country, you do make eye contact. What a bunch of nonsense of trying to figure out situational awareness. Hey, there's a squirrel over there in the tree, and I should pay attention to that squirrel. Come on, you can't pay attention to all these things. Just like the lights, just like the tree outside the window, your brain hears it all. Your brain is getting it. But whether or not you choose to focus on it, I don't know. How do you pick that? Everybody's wired a little bit differently. Everybody's going to focus in on something differently. Have you ever walked into a crowded place with someone else and the first thing you notice is something different than the first thing that they notice? Now, where would we ever have a situation like that? I know. Real estate. Both of you walk into the house for the first time. You and your clients. You notice this. They notice that. Ever have that happen? Have you ever walked into a utility room or a garage and the husband or the man notices something that the woman doesn't notice? I mean, I'm a tool guy. I look into the tools. My wife will go, whatever. I don't know what you're talking about. Then in other areas, like one of my daughters will always notice certain things. She will always point out things that are, she's very much a little princess at heart. So she will always point out the little things that are frilly and princessy in dresses. And another daughter, she will find a horse. I mean, you put something related to a horse anywhere near her, and she's going to be, look, thing of horse. I don't know. I don't see him. Then she points him out. I go, oh, yeah, I saw that. I was looking at the tractor. That's just me. So we look at things differently. And that doesn't mean that you need to change the way that I need to start looking for horses and princessy things. Because my brain, in order for me to rewire and program my brain to pay attention to those things, it takes weeks, months, years of training. And I don't mean like intensive, like CIA type training. I mean just thinking about, I need to focus on finding horses. I need to find it on all these other things. Because that's a crazy concept of situational awareness. You just can't develop situational awareness. You can't be a situational awareness ninja overnight. It takes a lot of time and dedication. And like we talked about before, even our Secret Service brothers out there who are the uniformed and non-uniformed Secret Service guys, they are on and then they're off. On and then off. When they're VIP, when they're a high value target, when they're principal, whoever it is that they are in charge of protecting and working with, when they are with them, they are on. All senses on. When they're not, they're not. I've been there, done that. When I was on mission in Baghdad, going down the streets, every sense was alive. I mean, sight, sound, everything. You were trying to absorb, just absorb, formulate, process. What do I need to do with this? Does that mean we need to drive over there? Does that mean we need to walk over there? Does that mean we need to park over there? Does that mean we need to get in, get out from over there? Do we need to move fast? Do we need to move slow? And you're processing all these things at once. And then when you get off mission, because you cannot maintain a healthy life at that level of intensity. You can't. I'm sorry for you guys out there that talk about situational awareness, but man, it's sad to watch you because you're thinking everybody's out there trying to kill you. I get it. I believe me, I get it. But you got to be able to back it down. And that's the number one thing that a lot of my law enforcement buddies out there, my brothers in arms, will want to say that you need to maintain situational awareness. It's just, there's more to it than that. Because once you develop situational awareness, all you're doing is feeding your instincts. And then what you do with it. Turning those instincts into action is what makes you survive. Period. Like I said before, or as I said before, human beings don't have a lot of built-in instincts. We have some that if we touch something hot, we pull our hand back, or we cut ourselves, we move, we feel a pain, we move back. More of a stimulus response though, quite frankly. Most of our world is a stimulus response type of mechanism. We only have a few instincts. Eating, reproducing, breathing. I mean, those basic functions that go on. I mean, these are basic instincts, essentially. But the rest of it is not. People say, well, we've got really good survival instincts. No, you don't. You've been able to process information that says that, I've seen this, or I heard this, or I read this, or I saw it on TV, I read it in a book, and this led to a bad thing. So your brain tells yourself that if I see something like that, then I need to avoid it. Other people do not make that connection. They see something, the same thing that you saw, read the same thing that you saw, watch the same movie, and they do not get that. That does not mean that they have bad instincts. It just means that their brains aren't making the same connections. Now, you can develop those same instinct type things, but you have to turn them into action in order for them to be effective. And that action could be anything. Could be anything. But it has to be tied to an action. The reason I say that humans don't have those big instincts is because some of the other animals out there in the world do some pretty amazing things when their first few hours of being born. How do those little tiny baby sea turtles crawl their way out of the sand and then go to the sea? That to me sounds pretty instinctual. That sounds like an instinct. We don't do that as humans. I mean, as babies, we're a mess. I mean, we're completely dependent on a ton of different things, and we're dependent on our parents to take care of us. I mean, our life is so fragile in those first few days and weeks and months that it's absolutely a mess. And then for years after that, we're still dependent in a number of different ways. So I don't know, humans, our instincts kind of stink. And everybody's instincts are a little bit different than others. All of those little baby sea turtles crawl up out of the sand and head to the sea. It's pretty cool, huh? But not everybody out there has great instincts behind the wheel of a car, right? I mean, doesn't really work out that way. So making sure that you turn those instincts into action. So to recap before we hit that last one, your job is real estate. Your mission is to go home every night. Then you need to develop your own to-do, not-to-do list. No more than 6 or 7 things that you absolutely under no circumstance will break. Then you must constantly improve both your own well-being, whether it's a mental well-being, physical well-being, improve your ability to stay safer, to maintain your own personal security, and to maintain your plans. Look at your to-do and not-to-do list. Look at those things and determine whether or not these things are actually even working. Then the last thing, the last of the big 5 principles. These are the big overarching things that help you from a strategic level, if you will, keep safe and do things a little bit better. And this last one is never negotiate with reality. You cannot negotiate with reality. If there is a bad guy right in front of you, negotiating with that bad guy is not likely to turn out well, because they are on a different level, on a different plane. They've already made the decision that they need to, remember what we talked about in all these other videos? You have something that they want. They think that they can get it and get away with it. Those 2 things. And once they've made the decision to say, yep, I'm going, and you are who I'm getting it from, and I don't care what it takes to get it, they have just acknowledged and dismissed any of the potential legal ramifications. The idea of going to jail, the idea of getting hurt, killed, murdered, whatever. They've already dismissed all of those things. They've already dealt with it on that level. They've already dealt with it. They may not want any of those things to happen, but they've already dealt with the possibility that it could. So when you try to negotiate with someone who's already made those decisions, and you're trying to negotiate from a standpoint of, why won't they just stop? Maybe I can show them how warm and kind and lovely a person I am. Show them that I care about them. And then you die, because they are not working on the same rule book that you are. They have a very different construct of life than what you do, because they don't care about the consequences. They don't care about going back to jail. You do. They don't care about dying, maybe. You do. They don't care about a lot of different things that you do. You cannot negotiate with that reality. If the boulder, I love the Wile E. Coyote stuff, but if you're standing there looking up and that boulder is falling down onto your head, you can't wish it away. You can't negotiate it away. You can't put out that silly little umbrella and hope that it stops it. You got to move. You got to get out. You got to go, and you got to go now. Remember that get off the X piece that we talked about? You cannot negotiate with reality. You can try and influence as much as you can, but you cannot negotiate with reality. What is. Bad guys are bad guys, and they have a different rule book than you do. When you've passed a point of no return or past a certain point, bad things will happen. When the threshold of violence has already been crossed, meaning that a bad guy has come to you and tried to do something to get to you, harm you, assault you, rape you, whatever the case might be, once the bad guy has crossed that threshold into violence, and you don't meet that violence with violence, world gets tough. Because they've already said, I'm willing to get violent. And you may not be. They use that to oversimplify the term. On a scale of 1 to 10, they may be at an 8, 9, or 10 on their willingness and ability to commit a violent act against another human being. Whereas you, even now that the bad event has happened, the incident is kicked off and the violence threat, you may have only moved up to a 3 or 4. You may tell yourself that I'm willing to do anything that's capable that I can in order to defend myself. But will you really? Will you really, under no hesitation whatsoever, would you inflict massive harm or death on that person in an instant? Because they're here and you're here and you got to get to here and you're going to try some things. This is not a you versus me. This is not I do something better. We're all in that situation. The minute someone meets us with violence, the first thing that happens is go, whoa, what was that? And then it takes us a while to realize that, oh, we need to ramp it up. Now, the faster you can move from here to here and meet it head on, the better off you'll be. But the reality of it is once you bump up, it's bumping up this way too. So it's going up above the roof. So on a scale of 1 to 10, this guy's now at a 12 or 14, and you're just getting to a 7. So you're halfway there. This is an oversimplified example of how to think about these things. But you cannot negotiate with the reality that this guy has already brought violence to the table. Those guys who come up and hit people on the back of the head with hammers as they walk down the street, they have already checked their conscience at the door, for just totally dismissed all consequences of bad things happen, and willing to the most heinous thing that you can think, just an innocent person, just a random person on the street, pow, hit him in the back of the head with a hammer and put him in the hospital to kill him. On the spot, completely random. You will not negotiate with that person. You will not. They already made that decision that that's what they were going to do when they walked out the door. You are not negotiating with that. You can try, but you're not going to win. That is not going to happen. There might be one time out of 1,000 where that works. So how do you get around that, right? You remember when we talked about this? Going back to that, everything that happens on the left of boom before the bad thing happens is where you want to focus. Because anything that happens over here ends up with life. You live. You get paid to live. That's prevent, avoid, impede, and deter. Anything that you can do on that side, you get paid to live. Because everything happens over here. Once you get to here, once you get to the boom, once you get to the incident, once you get to the bad thing that happens, everything that happens to the right starts to decrease your chances of survival and coming out of it unscathed. Because automatically, once the boom has happened, once the event has happened, once the assault has started, once the robbery has begun, you've already crossed the threshold. You're already in the bad world. Now you have two options. Recover, die. Recover, rest in peace. Either way, it's going to be a psychologically damaging, or at least a big deal in your own life about how easily you can recover. And if it's a very violent thing, you're going down that path. Even if it doesn't start off down that death path, that is exactly how the Beverly Carter situation down in Arkansas, the realtor down there who was missing because the bad guy was holding her trying to get some short cash. And when he saw that that wasn't going to pan out, they decided to take her life to make things easier on themselves. It didn't start out that way. They did not start out that way, but the boom had already happened. She had been abducted. She had been selected. Everything had gone well according to the bad guy's plan. She was abducted. Didn't work out, so instead of the recovery path, they went the death path. That's real. It's just real. You can't negotiate with reality. In the military, we have this term. When you're doing land navigation, this is a fancy little term for we take a big map and a couple of the little tools and we go out and we find random points in the woods and all over the place. That's land navigation. Now, when you're standing there with your map that shows you all the different terrain features and hills and creeks and valleys and elevation markers and things like that, and you're standing there and in your mind you're saying, there's no cliff. But as you look out over top of your map, there's a cliff. You better pay attention to that cliff and forget what you think you might know on the map. Because as they say, you orient your map to the terrain. You cannot orient the terrain to your map. It doesn't work that way. Well, there shouldn't be a river here. Well, there it is. One of you is wrong, and it doesn't matter which, because there's a river. Deal with it. You've got to deal with it. You've got to deal with what's actually in front of you. Not what you hope is in front of you. Not what you want to be in front of you. Not the way you think things might work out. You have to deal with exactly the situation as it stands on the ground in that moment in time. And you know what? Bad news doesn't get better with age. Bad news just doesn't get better. Let's keep with that river analogy or that cliff analogy. That cliff ain't going anywhere. That river, not going anywhere. If your objective is on the other side of it, you've got one choice. Figure out how to get around it, how to get over it, through it. You got to move, you got to deal with it. You have to deal with it. Because there's no making it go away. There's no little magic lamp that you can rub over here and, I wish this mountain would go away. It's not how it works. I would imagine Lewis and Clark would have loved that a couple times if they could make some of those mountains disappear on their trek to the west. Wow, that was random. But this is the type of thing that you just cannot negotiate. You cannot negotiate with reality. It just will not work. You will not survive. Because your options, the minute you pass that threshold, the minute you get all the left of boom, you get paid to live. Prevent, avoid, impede, deter, all of that stuff if it didn't work. Now you move over here. And now the bad thing has happened. And your options get fewer and fewer. And the time that you have to make those choices about which option to take gets shorter and shorter. And then the more you move down this path, the farther you move down this path, the less likely you're about to go down that recovery path. You're more likely to go down the really bad one, the rest in peace one. So, excuse me. This is real. This is not something to be taken lightly. This is not about meeting at the office. Because you can meet at the office and still end up in the trunk of a bad guy's car. This is not about checking IDs, because there are fake IDs. And I don't know about you, but I would not be able to recognize an Illinois driver's license if you held 3 of them in front of me. One of them fake, 2 of them real. Or the other way around, I would not be able to tell which one's which. Don't know about you, just not going to happen. It also doesn't keep you any safer to tell people where you are going. Because where you are going might not be where you end up. And even if it is where you end up, you may not even stay there. Besides, you're dealing with only being able to tell the police where you were last so they can start their investigation and hopefully find your body. Come on. You can do better than this. You know better than this. This is why the safety training and programs that are within the world of real estate are so dismissed. Like the training that you get, the association came out with their own numbers saying that this training just isn't very good. It just doesn't do what we want it to do. We don't know that it's very effective. So what do? You go out and you make yourself feel better by buying a tool. And it does. It feels better because all this stuff on the right-hand side of boom, after the boom has happened, after the bad thing has happened, it's fun. It's exciting. It's sexy. This is what action movies are all based on. The boom has already happened, and it's about what you do afterwards. And a lot of times, it ends up in the death part. Not often does it even recover, certainly not for most people. But it's cool. It's fun to learn Kung Fu. It's fun to get a merit badge or a certificate for having completed 3 hours of self-defense training. It's fun to learn and laugh and giggle with your girls as you're all very uncomfortable and you're learning these kicks to the crotch and all these different things. It's fun. I get it. It's nice that you get little things that look like jewelry, but they're actually, electronic pieces or apps. That's fun. But the bad thing has already happened. It's already happened. And I want it to not happen. Not happen at all. But that's not sexy. That's not fun. It's not fun to write out a plan. It's not fun to write out a to-do or not to-do list. It's not fun to focus on your job is real estate, but your mission is to go home every night. It's not fun to think about those things. That's not sexy. That's not life insurance. It's not sexy. It's not something that everybody wants to do. Everybody wants to go to the range, and everybody wants to learn, take an instant ninja class. Just add water, a check for $35 in 3 hours, and everybody wants that because it's fun. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things, but they should not be the basis. Anything that is the basis of your personal security and safety that is already on the side of the boom is bad. That's not how you treat fire safety in your house. You don't wait for the smoke alarms to go off if you see a fire in the corner. You put it out. If you can't put it out, you get out of the house, you call the fire department, right? This is what you do when it comes to that. If the fire's already there, bad things already happen. What are you going to do? Man, do what you have to. But the better option is, you know what? Let's not store those oily rags next to that high intensity heat lamp or something like that. Let's not let that thing on the stove sit there with the burner on and then, catch it on fire. Let's not use water to put out a grease fire. These are some real, I'm kind of laughing here, but we do these things on a regular everyday basis anyway. We already know what we need to do. We just don't do it. We don't give ourselves permission to do it because we're scared we're going to lose business. We're scared we're going to make somebody think less of us. We're worried that somebody's going to be offended. We're worried that we're going to lose a client. We're worried they're going to feel bad or be embarrassed. We're worried that we're going to be embarrassed. We're worried that we're going to seem weak or inadequate or something like that. That's our fear getting in our own way. When the things that you need to do to stay on the prevent side are actually pretty simple. They're not easy, but they're simple. The stuff that's down here is incredibly complex, not simple, not easy, and not reliable. All of the stuff on the right of the boom, it's just not. How many times you see a fire department show up with the first couple engines and the first thing they do is go, yep, need more engines, need more fire trucks, because we can't handle what's going on in front of us. That happens all the time. Do police officers call for backup? Absolutely. How many show up? 1, 2, 3, 4? How many times have you seen somebody pulled over on the side of the road and there's a string of cop cars lined up behind them? Well, they asked for 1 and they got 4. I mean, great. That's wonderful. We don't all have these luxuries. We don't have another fire station or another police car right down the road. We don't have another real estate agent that we can trust that would come in to help us out of a really bad situation. If you do, great, that's wonderful. But are they available 24/7 like law enforcement or fire emergency personnel? Probably not. Or if they aren't, have you asked? Or if they are, have you asked, hey, what's your schedule? Oh, I'm going out of town. Oh, man, it would have been nice to know that. So you got to keep these things in mind. There's a lot of not as exciting, not as fun stuff to do on the left-hand side of boom, but the right-hand side of boom just leads to death. It doesn't lead anywhere else. Yeah, okay, so you don't die because it was just a robbery. Who wants to be robbed? I don't want to be robbed and try and figure out how I'm going to recover. That's how PTSD starts. It's one of the ways. Is people just don't ever recover from that boom. They don't ever recover from that bad thing happening. Sometimes people get too close to the boom on the left-hand side, and that leads them down the path that they already have to recover. So why not? Why not put most of your efforts, if the boom is here, on stuff down there, way down there, as far down there as you can possibly make it? That's the way I've done it. And I've done it for almost 16 years. I personally planned, led, and conducted over 600 personal security missions in Baghdad, protecting very high-ranking people, moved them around on the streets of Baghdad, Iraq. So, been there, done that. 0 incidents. 0. Not one. Not one. Not one threat. Not one incident. Not one time did we fire our weapons in defense of our life. Not one time. And that, to me, is a much greater success rate than saying that, well, we fought our way out of a bad situation that one time. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be in that one time. I want to go home. And I want to take everybody home that went with me in one piece. So thank you so much for watching through these 9 episodes. And I hope that you go back and you watch some of these others. But we got 3 more coming up next week. And we're going to really hone in on some very specific real estate stuff. So I'm going to put the links below. Go in, check out. There's going to be some more things that are coming out to those who have signed up for that already. We're going to be putting out some additional safety things that kind of sum up some of these things, give you some more action items, a lot of more useful things that you're going to get out of that list that are not going to be readily available anywhere else. Why? Because I don't like to share what I think are good security measures with the bad guys. I get it. A bad guy could log in if they happen to be watching this, and then they'll get an inside clue, but no, not really. I'm putting it behind a firewall, and I want you to sign up for that because I want to make sure that you are in fact a real estate agent, and or related to someone or in a family member or something of that nature. I really want you to be as safe as you possibly can be, and one of the ways that we do that is by not sharing what we do with the general public. So that's why I'm doing that. No other reason. Not going to try and spam you, sell you anything. That's just what I'm doing. So thank you again so much for watching. Please share this video with a friend. Hey, good to see you, DJ. What's up, brother Knight? Knights Columbus, my brother from all the way on the other side of the U.S. there, fellow Knight. But thank you all for watching. DJ, thanks for tuning in. I saw you come in. I saw Ray come in. I saw a bunch of other people. I know I'm going to miss some of you guys. Brooksy, saw you come in there too. And really appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Appreciate the thumbs up and appreciate the share. So share this out to a real estate agent that you know. They send you enough crap in the email. Go send them something back. So I appreciate everybody for watching. And we will see you next time.